You can do all of that total cost of ownership stuff, but actually the game is, what did you promise?
Yeah.
What did you say back there? Yeah. So,
right. What did you say before I signed on the dotted line versus what's actually happening? Yeah. And once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as I seek out and interview leaders and practitioners who are innovating and building great scaled CS programs. My goal is to share what I've learned and to bring you along with me for the ride so that you get the insights that you need to build and evolve your own digital CS program. If you'd like more info, want to get in touch, or sign up for the latest updates, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast. This is episode 39. It's so great to have you back each and every week where we talk about all things customer success and specifically digital CS. Before we get started, today I do want to give a quick shout out to the Customer Success Collective for putting on an amazing event last week. The Customer Success Festival in Austin was on Tuesday and Wednesday. And not only was I, part of the event and had a great time at the event, met lots of really great people. Special shout out to Sophie for all your coordination work as part of the event. And especially Janelle Friday, who was the MC kind of chairperson of the event as well, gave a great keynote on emotional intelligence. So it was just great all around, and it was great meeting some of you there as well. Today we're speaking with James Lawson. He's a UK-based CS leader, has been in the game for a long time, currently runs River Consultancy Group, where he helps leaders just excel in terms of scaling CS and growing their CS orgs and doing it the right way. He has a lot of really unique insights, I would say, into what a modern CS org looks like, and specifically how you can leverage cross-collaboration and company-wide inputs into the customer journey. So we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about kind of storytelling and personalization of content and how some of these digital motions lead into that kind of company-wide collaboration around the customer journey. And he's just a good guy, very funny. There's a couple of pretty funny points in the conversation as well. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with James Lawson, because I sure did. Well, you ready to go now that we're going already?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
James Lawson. The way that I can always tell it's you on LinkedIn is not obviously your name, but then you've got that big check mark right by your name. That's how I always know. Oh, yeah, it's James. That's awesome. But wanted to welcome you to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. That's just a tick, by the way, a wingding.
It's good. Yeah, there's a couple of people that use things like that, and you can always pick their name out in I think that. But then if everybody did, then if you didn't do it, then you would stand out, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just a glorified attention seeker. But I kind of thought to myself, well, if I have to pay for it in other social media platforms, just use a wingding.
That's
find
right.
a way.
Yeah, find a way. Absolutely. So, I was excited to have you on because obviously you have a crazy success. I think you were at Oracle for like 5 decades, which is actually 7 years, something like that.
Yeah,
something like that. Done a lot of cool things. Now you're founder of River Consultancy Group, which is awesome. We'll definitely get into that. But I was curious if you could just kind of give a quick whistle-stop tour of where you've been, what you're doing now, and what your plans are for the future.
Yeah, sure. When you said, where have I been, it always makes me feel slightly guilty, like I'm then questioning, where have I been? What have you done?
What have you done? Inflection is very important.
Yeah, and it can be dark, but I won't make this dark. So basically I've done customer success most of my working career, and I started as a CSM, you could say, but kind of still in the leadership post. little company. Well, it wasn't a little company. It was Taleo was the original
Yeah.
place where I learnt the trade. Acquired by Oracle. I tried to leave Oracle several times, and like the Death Star, it kept sucking me in. So I kind of went, "Oh well, I might as well just give in to the force and stay in Oracle." And I think whenever I say to people I've been in customer success my whole career, it's just because it's been in various guises. There's been the business development role of it. There's been the very support heavy role of it, the techie side of it, the I'll be your friend's customer for always side of it.
Sure.
So I've been in the various guises of it my whole career. And I think that every time you're in a company and you're doing customer success, you always feel like that you know everything about it, like a 14-year-old kid going through that time in their life where you think, well, I know everything. Nobody can tell me what to do. And then as soon as you step into your next role, you realize that you don't. And certainly very recently, when I stepped out of the recent company I was in, Litera, I stepped out thinking I'm an expert. And the truth of it is, to this day, looking back, you are never an expert, And it's the same as, I compare it to when I first saw my daughter being born, or, coming into this world. When she was born, kicking and screaming, it was the worst day of her life, right?
Sure.
She was warm and safe and all that. And then she's coming out. And then I realized I had this fast forward flash of, hang on, like right now, everything is going to be new to her. Every experience is new. She hasn't had her first, discussion. There's air she has to breathe. There's stuff she needs. There's a divorce, there's whatever, there's all those things she has to experience. It's all new, and it's no different in CS. And it's no different in most jobs. But in CS, I think it's quite, as a profession, it's more prolific that you experience something for the first time over and over again. So whenever I hear someone say, oh yeah, I've done this, I always think, I don't think you have.
You bring up a very interesting point, because it relates to something that I've said a few times on the podcast with relation to digital customer success. But I think CS in general is where I feel like the most amount of variability lives within like a single function from org to org to org to org, because a CS role in one place is going to be completely different than a CS role in another place, or even within like segments, in that variability. Whereas in, I don't know, an account executive at one SaaS firm and an account executive at another SaaS firm is going to be I think relatively kind of the same, right?
Yeah, there's some commonalities there, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think that and also I if you think about any product outside of SaaS, like where are the CSMs?
Yeah.
Why is that? Like, if you just think of it in a really basic, generic way, why is there customer success in just software? Now, I would expect, if I was in a bigger room, people will go, well, yeah, there are customer successes in other customer success managers.
Yeah.
And there's a group in LinkedIn, and it proved my sort of point on this, because I wanted to just go and explore that theory. And when I looked in there, 80% of the CS professionals in there were to do with software, but there were a good chunk within the 25,000 that were in this particular group that were customer success managers in other product lines.
Sure.
But when you look at what they do, you suddenly realize, oh, wait, this is why there's ambiguity around the role. This is why it's difficult to pin it down. This is why there's variability. But also I looked at it and thought, do you know what? It doesn't matter that I think we don't need to pin it down, because I think it's all to do with working back from the customer to what's needed. And if it's not a CSM, then what's needed? And this is why today I very much stand by, and this is probably the hill that I will die on, in that I stand by the fact that customer success is a company capability rather than a function or a department. And that doesn't mean to say that I don't think there should be CSMs, because there absolutely should. I just mean that it needs to be spearheaded by that as a task force. So that's where I see specifically data backing up that point. For example, the leading pace setters in SaaS, the Databricks, etc., that are miles away from anyone else in customer acquisition costs, they have that down. Now, you could argue, but the product's different. It's simpler. It's a bit more. But regardless of all that, you cannot walk away from the fact that those guys have got that down because they have started to treat customer success as an org capability.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're among a number of people that are thinking that way, because I think, to your point, I think the CSM will always have a home because there's always a need to have somebody focused on kind of the executive relationship and driving specific outcomes and things like that. But when it comes to the customer journey, it's not just in CSM land. Like, everybody has a hand in it. Even the finance has a hand in it. Even, obviously sellers and support and, professional services and whatnot. But I think a healthy organization should be aware of, interact with, and contribute to the customer journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as well, the interesting thing I think happens commonly is that there is a lot of firms fall asleep at the wheel a little bit with what the initial promise was. And I go back to that example I made about there being, why is there only CS in software or SaaS? And I know, caveat that with and a few other organizations and products.
Sure.
But I go back to this thing of when the initial sale happens, if you're leading with something like, for example, McKinsey would say, in the SOW, they say something like, we will engage with you on the mutual agreement that the value that's being provided to you is less than the money you pay. Sorry, it's more than the money you pay. It's more than
I was going to say.
I'm out.
Like, you're always going to pay us more than we think we're worth.
Which is actually probably the cold hard truth. Sorry, McKinsey. But yeah, you're getting more value, and you're paying less for that value. And once you enter that agreement, the interesting thing is that and this is why I think CSMs live more in SaaS, is that it's a subscription. So the customer is always asking, would I buy again today, at every interaction? And so they're subscribing to that agreement and the solution that I'm going to see value. So, and because they're subscribing, there needs to be a pulse on that, and that can come from anywhere. And that's where CSMs, should be primarily focused on the value element of it. I think for most startup organizations, getting there is obviously not a straight line, and that's where we need CS professionals to help. But I think that's where I see personally in my journey where the wheels come off, or people fall asleep at the wheel because they go in without that initial piece. You can do your total cost of ownership of the department, you can do your return of investment on the CS function, you can do all of that total cost of ownership stuff, but actually the game is, what did you promise?
Yeah.
What did you say back there?
Yeah.
So,
right. What did you say before I signed on the dotted line versus what's actually happening? Yeah, for sure. It's the age-old problem. So, I think this dovetails nicely into this a little bit because, one of the things that I ask all of my guests is kind of what their elevator pitch standard definition of like digital customer success is. And I'm curious to get your take because, you do have some unique takes on CS in general and lots of experience there. But if you had to explain in layman terms what DCS is, what would you say?
In layman terms, I'd say the digital CS element is providing value at scale with the illusion of it being personable.
Yeah.
And I put illusion in there purely because in the in the digital world of of websites and domains and your AWS, Drupal, etc. I've been a part of, the personalization element of it is captivating, right?
Yeah.
And you can achieve that through engaging with customers too, because that's the way they do it. So if you're buying a pair of Nikes and it comes up with your specific size and
Yeah.
a style that you like, maybe it's Jordan's, then you go, hey, they know me. They recognize. Now you know that there's something behind there because people are smart. Kids are smart.
Sure.
They know they know me. That's why the kids aren't looking at their phones and going, oh my god, they're listening. That's all the oldies.
Yeah.
All the old people are going,
Yeah,
how did
exactly.
it know that I was looking at it?
How did it know?
Yeah, how do you know? But the young kids are like, of course it does, and that is right there. What I think that digital customer success is going to go to, because it's about being relatable and relevant, and it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily and personable. The whole fact that it isn't a person, fine, it's okay to say I believe that they'll still need people, but
Yeah.
the convenience of that is just so
Yeah.
so beneficial for both the customer and the organization.
Yeah, I love your definition, and you're right. Like, personalization is is kind of like the gold standard, I think, in a good digital program, where you're not just filling in the name, right? It's like
Yeah.
dear Boolean or whatever it is, or dear token.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like, who the person is by name, what their general role is within the organization, and so you're kind of tailoring the content a little bit. But I think, to your point, I think it's important to also, like, almost play with the fact that it's fake personalization. Like, you got to kind
Yeah.
of own it a little bit in your digital
Yeah.
motions,
For sure.
but
Yeah.
also, like, make sure that the customer knows that there's always a human somewhere that is
Yeah.
available.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And I go. I like the idea. I saw something play out not so long ago with a client where their approach to the whole thing was, we want the customer to have no surprises unless they are good.
Yeah, sure.
which
Yeah.
I loved, because it was like, of
Uh-huh.
course, you don't want to see any
Yeah.
surprises, because you don't want to have risk of renewal just appear, but you do
Yeah.
want them to get good product advice. So I was like, yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. And where they carried that as actually a core value of their company, which is really interesting. No
I love that.
surprises because they're good, which I
Nice.
loved.
Yeah. That's
Needs
really
a bit
cool.
of
And
work
and
on
I
the wording, but yeah.
well, I think it plays to the fact that also we don't have a habit of celebrating things
Yeah.
enough, I think, in CS, and especially in digital. Like, digital is all about, like, at least most programs are all about, like, alerting and, proactive engagement at certain points in the journey and things like that. But I think that should include, like, celebrating, your champion's wins of accomplishing XYZ, or if a user just uploaded 10 widgets into the whoosy what's it's, then,
Yeah.
there should be some confetti that appears and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you see? Like, do you see how do you see that being done at the moment with the celebrating success thing? Because I think it's sometimes just overlooked a lot. You know?
Yeah, I don't think it's done a lot. Where I've seen it done well is, where it's obvious that whoever's behind the digital motion has clearly identified those key moments in the journey that need to be celebrated in order to, like, keep the game of things going.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Gainsight is actually a company that does this quite well.
Yeah.
They successes in platform that, and they reward certified and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Other
those kinds of
CSPs are
things, but
available.
that's true. But, like, um I think it's those companies that have a really good handle on the user persona, not just
Yeah.
not just the journey of the entire customer, but the journey of the individual persona, and being able to track milestones along there. I think
Sure.
that's really the key.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm finding that the just from an axiom view, I look at things and go, when we see some of these successes, but also some of the challenges,
Yeah.
it worries me what learns are taken from it. And the reason I say that is because there has to always be this return to a discovery of having a process, etc. Because I've noticed in this industry, and LinkedIn is very guilty of this. There's a lot of this is how you should do stuff. There's a lot of negativity actually. CSMs are not
Yeah.
doing this, do this. And I think
Yeah.
you have to have a responsibility of the messaging you're putting out there, in that when you take something, when you look at your audience and they're taking something from that, what
Yeah.
remember that might not work, and they'll come back to
Right.
you. They'll think of you and they'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So, I always think the success thing is a better way to play it, because the success leaves clues.
Yeah.
Whereas saying to people like you shouldn't be doing this might not necessarily be right.
We have a saying in our family, and it's quite simple. It's like, you don't should yourself. Like if you say, "Oh, I should have done XYZ," it's
Yeah,
like, don't should yourself. It's all
yeah,
good. but I think that carries over too. I think one of the things that I had Greg Danes on recently, and he was talking about the kind of the magic words in CS, which is, I think, a way that you can kind of toe the line a little bit. Like, I think it's roughly akin to other customers in your space are doing XYZ. Like, you take what others are doing and you're not going like, well, you're not doing this, you suck. But
yeah,
you're saying like, hey, your peers are doing this,
yeah.
just so you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he's totally right. Like, it's how you articulate things is key, and it blows my mind. Like, I do still feel like there are influencers parading as, CS experts who've been out of touch, who are not articulating value with impact, and I think that rolls along. And so a
Yeah.
lot of the best training that is offered these days, there's a good friend of mine called Maurice Hellemans. He does some training specifically on presentation skills, but they're very specific around delivering value with impact. So, and
Yeah.
CSMs that are able to do that need to learn off influencers and credible sources who can say, look, approach it like this, say it like this, because
Right.
then you're consultative. You don't just know stuff; you can apply your knowledge, and that makes a great CSM. Anyone that can apply their knowledge, relevantly and articulating it the right way. I think it's a bit of an art, and I think it is sort of drifting away a little bit. But I think those CSMs that have knowledge commerce going forward, are in a consultative mode and have some expertise and niche behind them and can articulate value with impact. I think those are the guys that are the future, for sure.
And I think that's where that's the real value in a CSM, right? And I've talked about this relatively frequently, but it's this that's the goal, the sweet spot for the mix between a digital motion and a human, because the human is there to provide value and insights and extreme personalization and kind of the relationship element of things, but it's not having them pull down data and do the
Yeah,
analysis and create
yeah,
insights and send 50 emails to the same
yeah.
like, that's not where a CSM's value is. And so I was curious to kind of get your take on that, on where that sweet spot is, with the interaction between like digital and human.
Yeah, so and this isn't my view, this is just what I've seen work. So from a
Yeah.
customer point of view, stories, how you tell a story, the expressions you use behind the story, which
Mm.
which come off the back of data points or anything digital are incredible. Like they just elevate everything, and almost tell your customer that you are of high value. You're a high value contact to have, and they love having people like that. People like having people, and in fact, when they're in the M&A world, they're the people that are gold. Oh, that's not a cost over there. That's person right there. We can't lose them. It's not because they're indisposable. It's just because of what they can deliver and how they deliver it and the stories they tell.
Yeah.
So most of the stories I have are terrible and rubbish and like ridiculous. But they're just ridiculous. But I mean, the thing is that the reason I still tell them is because I'm finding a way of describing something that isn't very exciting, right? So I always tell the story of, when we spoke earlier about surprises and no surprises, I always tell the story of once being on a train, and this actually happened to me, and it was just the most strangest thing to ever happen in my whole life. I was on a train, and there was a woman sat next to me, and I'm a little guy, so I was kind of shoved in the corner of the train. And she very casually opened her bag and took out a banana. And she ate the banana. And I just thought, okay, she's having a snack. And then she took the banana peel and just put it neatly on my lap. And I didn't know her. Just almost like, like Mario Kart, where it's sort of upside down and it's just on the floor. And just, that was it. And I didn't know what to do. And so I just I didn't say anything. I'm too polite. I picked it up and put it to one side. But you cannot, with anything, that was a surprise. You can't predict that. Can you predict churn? To a degree, but stuff happens like that. You cannot get away from the fact that people are weird and unpredictable. You won't be able to change that. But what you can do is you can tell stories and gauge from that person, where do they sit on the spectrum? Are they an unpredictable contact? Is this person worthy of digital interaction? Because if they're not, you want to be there. Whereas there might be someone where you go, hey, this guy, he might need me, but actually he needs more digital interaction. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I'm still stuck on the banana peel. Like what I want to know is, was she just eccentric and maybe on the spectrum and didn't really realize it, or was she trying to create a moment?
She created a moment without a doubt.
Was she trying to?
She looked like she looked like someone who you'd get to host a very posh dinner party. She was
really,
she was one of them. Like she would make a really good hotel manager. And at the time I looked like someone who was helping a brother move house. I looked like a scruff. So maybe she just thought
you were the help.
Yeah, I was the help. I was only good for one thing, and that was propping up a banana skin. Yeah. But it's just one of those things when I think about, it's just one of those things when I think about customers and customer success and digital, I just think, you know yourself as a person and as a customer of other vendors and things, that you know yourself, if you think carefully, that you are unpredictable and you will make choices. Yeah. You will change your car every 2 years. You will do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So introspectively, we should consider the fact that it's great having all these methods and frameworks and playbooks, but actually what we should do is have a conversation and make an educated decision whether, and we're not going to do that at scale, of course, but of course we can make our way through that and understand where digital applies and where it doesn't.
Well, I mean, I think you hit on something very, very important, though, and something, when I asked you your definition of digital, one of the elements that a lot of people wind into their definition is essentially meeting the customer where they want to be met, right? Yeah. And as a human, that can be relatively simple. I mean, if you've ever taken kind of like a customer service or kind of phone etiquette or kind of phone skills, soft skills type courses, one of the first things they always teach you is like, okay, mirror your customer,
Yeah.
mirror their tone, mirror their pace, do all that kind of stuff. But then it's also like you have that human interaction where you can literally ask your customer, like, do you prefer email? Do you prefer SMS? Like, what's that?
Yeah.
What's that all about? And I think the opportunity that we have in digital and that a lot of people are starting to do is ask those questions digitally. Maybe somebody wants an email, maybe somebody wants an in-app notification, maybe they don't want both.
Yeah.
Do they have a preference, one or the other? And letting you individual users kind of identify how they want to be communicated with, ways that you can design your digital motions to serve the outcome, but then also you know, help preserve some sanity.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really difficult task as well, just because
It is.
I think like if you delve into personas and job roles now, I'm not quite sure if the typical methods, I think the principles remain the same, but I think the methods of interacting may not necessarily be what you think.
Right.
So, as an example, I generally would have thought people in perhaps the manufacturing space, would prefer a light touch because they're busy, but I don't know that for sure. So I always feel
Yeah.
like there's the persona, and then perhaps there's the disc profile, or there's more around that which needs to be shaped, which makes it quite tricky. But I have seen it. I don't know if you have. I have seen it where is completely overthought about, and you should really
Yeah.
meet the customer or try attempt to meet the customer, and then adjust the sales from there, rather than try and create a perfect fit. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, knowing what the habits are,
Yeah.
of a persona. I mean, the most obvious one and the one that's, pretty plain is your executive buyer is likely not going to spend a lot of time in product messaging to an executive is probably not going to be
Yeah.
effective versus the admin is going to live in there. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, go to town,
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of executives say to me. In fact, there's one that said something to me recently. He was from Spain. In fact, he still is. Anyway, he said to me, listen, James, that can I just tell you that in terms of our value creation plan and our vision and what we're trying to achieve, success for us isn't achieving that. Success for us is nurturing the right habits to reach that goal. That
Yeah.
success is the day to day. And then what he said is, if we can get that day to day bit right in terms of how we interact with you, with our partners, with our customers, then we've nailed it. And I know that's not going to happen overnight. And he said that was success, which is he said a lot of executives are now thinking like that, because whether you're trying to sell a company or you're trying to, increase, accelerate EBITDA or whatever you're trying to do, whatever initiatives you have, functional or financial, ultimately it comes down to the what do we need to exemplify internally, and how can you as a CS person help us exemplify that? And I think there is, maybe you see this too, but I think there are the CSMs that lead the customer to that, and then I think there are CSMs that let that hit them in waves and therefore become more of
Right.
a victim of what the
Yeah,
customer
it's
portray.
true.
Yeah.
Well, it's true because I think more times than not, your customer doesn't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And they don't really, they don't have a full vision for what the next year kind of looks like in terms of success. Whereas ESM, hey, guess what? You have full 3 or 4 most common outcomes that your customers are driving for, and
Yeah.
you have kind of an idea for what kind of steps along that journey you need to drive. And so I think you're right. A good CSM and a good digital program
Yeah.
provides kind of that the
For sure.
the bits of bread on the way back. I don't know. I was trying to do a Red Riding Hood analogy there, but that just failed on me completely.
Was it
so
bread?
Never mind.
I think it might have been bread.
It was
No.
bread. It was a trail of breadcrumbs to lead her back to civilization.
Yeah, Red Riding Hood.
It was. Yeah.
You know what's interesting about Red Riding Hood is she eats the grandma, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The wolf eats the grandma.
Yeah, and then gets in her. But then he got in her clothes, so he must have had to get the grandma naked to then put on the clothes. Sorry to believe that on your podcast, but that's the truth. Let's just put it out there.
It's cause and effect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely.
like Casper. It's like Casper. People forget that's a dead kid, right? Yeah,
that's going to be the show promo.
I think that the other interesting thing is that with the digital side and is the reflection or the optics of having digital CS with the product that must sort of echo its simplicity. So I hear this over and over again, especially on the executive side. I keep getting told, James, we will always choose simplicity over innovation. So when we buy, it's no longer about price. And I was like, of course it's about price. No, it's not. Actually, if it's simple enough for procurement to buy, for us to execute, for our internal people to use, you win every time. And that's why people buy, big, the big packages, because it is, to them, in their mind, it's simple. But if you have a digital CS program that exemplifies that simplicity, then great. But having a digital CS program for something that's maybe a complex product, it is almost, the optics of that are kind of strange, aren't they? I think there's more to it than that. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I don't know.
I totally agree. I mean, it's a lot simpler to build a simple digital program for something that's, kind of single-minded and does one or two things and whatever. If you have a complex product set, or there's multiple products that are tied into one thing, at that point it becomes crazy convoluted, because then all of a sudden you've gone from one customer champion to like four.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I guess depth of adoption, which is the key. Like, people like to measure breadth, and I'm like, no, you need depth. You need the workflow. Like, with a digital program that's more simple, then you're going to get that depth of adoption. So that's easier to then plant a story around and go, it's obviously going great, than to have a huge tool with multiple workflows.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we touched on a little bit earlier was this notion of really getting the entire company kind of through and around the customer journey and kind of owning CS from various facets. And I was curious to get your take on what that looks like digitally, because I think so many of the digital programs that are out there are starting to embrace internal workflows and efficiency. That do you have a sense for where it is in that in the internal kind of collaboration around the journey?
Yeah, so I mean, I see it in kind of three channels, really. So the first channel I see it in is how internal teams collaborate to own actions as a result of customer sentiment, if that makes sense. So if you are doing a survey in whatever way, I believe, I have strong beliefs that if I'm responding to a survey, and let's face it, everybody hates surveys, but if I'm responding to it, the natural instinct in me is, I'll say, I'm British, so I'm going to be like this. I'm going to go, they're never going to do anything about it, right? So, but what is such an amazing thing, and I know lots of firms are doing this, is they're jumping on that sentiment and going, we hear you, and no, we're never going to do that. And that is fantastic to hear. But also equally fantastic to say, we hear you, let's talk about how we might be able to achieve that. Now, from that point on, what happens internally needs to almost be some form of intervention in which we're tracking those trends and themes and things that we should take advantage of, and applying a cost to that decision. So digitally, it's making its way to a centralized location whereby we can make some really intelligent decisions, which can then feed digital marketing, can feed digital CS. And I saw this incredible thing, and I think it was done by the guys at IBM, where they were sending out feelers based on sentiment. So we get our customers feel this, right? And then they'd send these things out, and they were going. It was conjecture, right? But the thing was, nobody was. They got deals from it because just because things are in the press or in LinkedIn or on social doesn't mean that's what's happening necessarily. There's undercurrents of impacts happening to these businesses that require solutions. And so that internal digital come together thing, it can be leveraged for a substantial gain, right? And that's just channels. The other thing I've seen work really well is via Slack or Teams internal channels. That Teams strategy, I had no idea how beneficial it would be to really improve operational efficiencies, but also drive down costs. It blows my mind actually if you get that right. And one of those things was I think it's known as a success desk in some places, a heal desk in others, whereby you have the CSM in a call whereby you have all the key stakeholders and you have submitted something to the desk which is a blocker to a deal, a blocker to a renewal, or you smell smoke. So in other words, it's not like a risk register. You're just saying, this customer hasn't spoken to me and they normally do. I'm going to call it out. I'm going to wave my flag. Can someone own this or tell me if they might know why? Right. And just having that awareness of it and that flag raised in an open forum and in a place where it's recorded is, again, hugely powerful because you can track what's been saved, what has been put on the line, what we've been suspicious, putting a cost on those things is beautiful. And also understanding where your ICP might be going, because the other thing, and this is the third channel, is that the internal the ICP as a digital representation of the ICP, in which I believe everybody should fully understand. I believe it shifts and changes over time. Like, I think there are things that change within it. Like it morphs slightly. And if you're a product person and you're using something like a layer cake to dictate where you're hedging your bets in terms of where the product's going, I believe you need to keep an eye on that ICP by getting feedback into it and closing the loop as to, from the customer success team or whoever you have customer facing, to say, we're hearing this. Is this a thing? Well, let's check. Is it a thing? Does it need to alter our ICP? Should we be moving the product on that? The difficulty with that is, if you're running customer advisory boards, is that a majority of SaaS firms, and this is a difference between the leading pace setters and the others, which is very interesting. The leading SaaS firms do cabs for their top customers, right?
Right.
Now, until the last 6 months, I've been like, of course, that's the right way to do it. Now I'm looking at going, you're falling into a trap. Because what's actually more important is all of the inputs from your long tail. They should be educating your enterprise customers, right? Yeah. They're noisy as hell, obviously. Your enterprise customers will have quite niche requirements. They often think they know best practice, but the best practice lives with the majority who are scaling up, right?
Exactly.
And that's where, if you feed that into the ICP, you can start to use the digital aspects of it to I love that, to get a compass on it.
Yeah, and that long tail, customer, like your smallest customers, the ones innovative because they've been forced to be innovative because of whatever constraints they're facing and those kinds of things. And so, I think that's fascinating. And like, how many times have we responded to survey knowing full well we weren't going to hear back? And so, to your first point, like, just responding puts you like ahead of a lot of surveys out there and a lot of companies out there that just, it's going into a black hole somewhere. So
exactly. Yeah. And I do think surveys, they're a necessary evil. I get it. And
it's a love-hate.
Yeah. It's a love-hate, but also I sort of feel like maybe if we change the word, or I don't know. I also feel, I find it's really interesting that when you plug surveys in product and not via email, that you start to
Yeah.
get a better response rate. And that tells me more
Yeah.
about how the survey is delivered over and above
I
the
think we
art
should call them quandaries instead of surveys.
quandaries. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quandaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tip me. Tip me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Um, I'm conscious of time, and unfortunately, you and I have blabbered away basically an hour, which is amazing because every time I'm surprised by the time, it means it's been a good conversation. So
That's
it's
good.
been good.
Thank you.
But as we kind of close things out, I do have a couple of other standard questions for you. The first one is kind of in your content diet, what are you paying attention to?
God, you panicked me a little bit there when you said diet because it's not good. But content diet.
Same.
Cheese mainly. My content diet is so, so I read the thing called the Daily Stoic. Are you aware of the Daily Stoic?
No, I am not.
Ryan
It's
Holiday.
interesting.
It's a philosophy. Every day there's a different Stoicism quote, and
Oh, cool.
it's every day I read one page. I've done it for like 4 years. It sets my day up, and it, it it just helps me almost frame my day, like bookend my day. Ironically, the
Yeah.
Daily Stoic is great, and if you're a CSM, most of the CSMs I know, I tend to send them a copy because it's such a tough job, and it's emotionally tough, more emotionally tough than I think anyone realizes.
Yeah.
It's definitely the hardest job in the company, without a question of doubt, but nobody quite gets the psychological impact it can have on you. And the Stay Stoics helped me and many others through that by thinking more clearly. So that's one.
That's
Um,
great. I just subscribed.
oh yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's great. I hope you like it. And Deep Work is a great book. There are many other books. I'm currently reading Deep
Yes.
Work again because I'm a terrible victim of trying to do many things at once. And
Yeah.
there are many other books that are really, really good. But in terms of podcasts and channels, I tend to every guest that you've had on, I follow. So I'd follow all those guests. Mike is superb. In fact, I'd say that
Yeah.
the likes of Dave Jackson and Mike have been they have shaped the way I've thought a lot about things. Like if someone gets you to
Sure.
question things, they're a person to follow. Whereas if someone gets you to go, that's neat, probably just that's great, fine.
That's great.
It's like throwing an onion. Okay, fine. But
Yeah.
those
Right.
guys, they're super smart. Yeah, I think that's it really. Not
Yeah.
extensively
That's
as well.
great. It, is there anyone in digital CS that you would want to give a shout out to or some kudos to that is doing some cool things?
Yeah, but it's very embarrassing because I can't remember his surname. But he's the guy. He's the AI guy.
Mickey Powell?
That's him, Mickey Powell.
Yep.
I'm a massive fan.
Good.
He doesn't know me. I don't know him. I'm kind of his
Yeah.
secret stalker. Um,
Yeah.
um, I've been using a lot of AI tools recently,
Uh-huh.
and I've been trying to find, and I've been leveraging them into strategic success plans as means of accelerating it, like outcomes, right? And
Yeah.
he has been absolutely fundamental in just gaining clarity about what matters most in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, big up,
Mickey's amazing. He was
Mickey.
episode one.
Episode one,
Episode
really?
one. Episode
Wow,
one. Yeah.
gosh, look at that.
Um, tools are you paying attention to?
Well, Marcus Wrench is an obvious one. Marcus, everyone knows Marcus Wrench.
Yeah.
And so here's the weird thing about me is when I first left the corporate world, I very rarely pay attention to SaaS vendors. Now I know that's completely bananas, but the first thing I did was I went and spoke to a ton of SaaS vendors' customers. So I pay a lot of attention to customers of SaaS vendors, because actually the customer's customer is the real customer. Now, if I don't know about them, what do I know about customer success? There's a thing flying around at the moment, which is gone kind of viral amongst forums of procurement departments, and they call it the customer success bubble, because they're saying these customer success guys, they don't quite realize that we're vendors and we can see what they're posting. Like, some of them are saying they don't know what they're doing, and these guys do know what they're doing. And so there's this whole thing, and so I tend to follow all the big brand names, but mainly the top spenders in SaaS, because I want to know, you know, that's the real audience, you know. So I do a bit of that, and I like to see. I just quite like all their the initiatives that they have and what they're focusing on, because if those initiatives are things where CS can help, I feel like CS has got a really good place, as is digital CS. You know, there's.
Where can people find you, pay attention to you, engage with you, chat with you, all of that kind of stuff? Where can Mickey Powell stalk you?
Where can Mickey Powell stalk me? Oh, wow. Yeah. So you can find me. So my website is riverconsultancygroup.co.uk, because the .com was far too expensive. And you can find me. I'm on LinkedIn as James Lawson. You'll find the wingdings tick to make me stand out more than I should. And I'm based in the UK, but I work all hours. So you can reach me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to have a conversation with anyone, whether it be CSM, you know, whoever. And hopefully they'll find me on this podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, like I said, it's been a pleasure. I've super appreciated this conversation and your time, and it's been good. Can't wait to share it.
Me too. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us to grow and to provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more details about the show at digitalcustomersuccess.com. My name is Alex Turkovich. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.